we're running a few minutes behind. We just have got new audio equipment this evening, so we're just setting things up. Welcome to tonight's Planning Committee meeting. I'd like to acknowledge the traditional owners and custodians of the land in which we are gathered here today, the Wurundjeri people of the Kulin Nation, and pay my respects to elders past, present and emerging, and acknowledge and welcome any Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people who may be with us here this evening. Membership this evening is as listed in the agenda. We have apologies from Councillor Lawrence and Councillor McCarthy, who are on an approved leave of absence, and apologies from Councillor Greco. Item 3 is disclosures of conflicts of interest. Are there any disclosures? No? Thank you. Item 4, confirmation of the minutes of a Planning Committee meeting on the 16th of April 2018. Moved by Councillor Williams and seconded by Councillor Messina. All those in favour? Motion's carried. Item 5 is consideration of reports. 5.1, application for a planning permit at 386 to 392 Bell Street, Preston. Officers.
Thank you, Madam Chair. The proposal is to demolish the existing buildings on 2 lots that make up the site and construct a 6-storey building plus basement and a rooftop terrace. The mixed-use development proposes 2 shops and a food and drink premises on the ground floor fronting Bell Street, with a combined floor area of 339 square metres. A total of 39 dwellings are provided, comprising 10 one-bed apartments, 25 2-bed apartments and 4 3-bed apartments. A basement provides for 49 car parking spaces for residents and staff. 44 bicycle parking spaces are included on the ground floor. The contemporary design utilises 2 types of brick to the bottom 4 storeys and colour-bond cladding to the upper 2 storeys. Design features comprise timber cladding to the ground floor facades, perforated metal and vertical louvers. The site is zoned Priority Development Zone Schedule 2 and is affected by the Development Contributions Plan Overlay and the Heritage Overlay. There is no restrictive covenant registered on the title for the subject land. The application was advertised, and 2 objections were received as summarised and responded to on page 11 of the agenda. The application is accompanied by a structural engineer's report and heritage assessment that indicate the existing heritage dwelling is beyond reasonable repair. These reports have been reviewed and the dwelling's demolition is considered acceptable. A 6-storey height in this location is envisaged in the Preston Central Incorporated Plan, given the site's location within the Preston Central Activity Centre. A waiver of visitor and customer car parking is considered acceptable in this location, given the Preston Activity Centre offers a diverse mix of commercial, cultural, civic and employment opportunities within walking distance and has excellent access to public transport and bicycle infrastructure. The proposal for a multi-level mixed-use development has strong planning policy support and demonstrates compliance with relevant planning policy, including the Preston Central Incorporated Plan and Clause 2206 of the Darebin Planning Scheme. And so approval is recommended subject to conditions outlined on pages 3 to 9 of the agenda. Thank you.
Thank you. The applicant isn't registered to speak, so I will call on Debbie Angel, who is registered to speak as an objector. Would you like to come forward to the microphone here? Thank you. You'll have 5 minutes to address us. Thanks.
It's my first time, a bit nervous, so hopefully I'll get through it. First of all, I sent some photos earlier today. I don't know if you guys have had a look at those or no. Okay, well, I'll proceed anyway. My name is Deborah Angel and I've lived at 11 Arthur Street, Preston for 22 years. Thank you for allowing me to speak today. My main objection to the development of 386, 392 Bell Street, Preston is that there is inadequate provision of car parking spots and reliance on street parking in a street surrounded by similar developments and businesses that already rely on Arthur Street for parking. This is a large development. It's 6 storeys, 39 apartments, 3 retail outlets, retail to have a combined space of 339 square metres. The statutory parking requirements for this building is 63 car spots, and the application is for 49, which is 14 less than required. The proposed allocation of car parking spots per the planning meeting agenda minutes is for the requested 49 car spots, which has no allowance for residents, visitors, parking and for customers of retail. There is argument in both the Planning Committee meeting agenda and the Traffic Assessment Report that the existing occupants of this site have a parking requirement of 21 car spaces and only 6 were provided. This meant there was an existing shortfall of 15 parking spots, which is very similar to the proposed project. This is incorrect. Currently, 386 Bell Street have 7 car spots, and 392 has a driveway which accommodates 3 cars, which is a total of 10 spots, not 6 as stated in both reports. The car park calculations for 386 Bell Street is that it has a floor space of 559 square metres. This is also incorrect. The lot size is 559, the office floor area is approximately 230, which is 40% of the lot. So a car park requirement is 8 spots only. In summary, the current dwellings are required to have 10 car spots, and these are provided. This new development will cause an impact on the availability of parking in the street. I'm also concerned about the impact on the rate of the retail outlets on parking. The allocated parking is 6 spots for retail staff. The calculation used for the existing offices was 3.5 car parks for every 100 square metres. Using this calculation, the retail would require 12 parking spots and only 6 are allocated. The planning meeting agenda states that only 1 space is required for every 100 square metres of retail. I'm not sure of the reason of this, but I would have thought staff requirements would be similar for retail as office. Without the nature of the business of the retail outlets being determined, it is hard to estimate the parking requirements of customers. The type of trade will determine the duration patrons will park and the likelihood of them taking public transport. For example, if they are purchasing goods, then car use is likely to transport home their purchases. The agenda minutes state that there is recommendation to waiver standards for visitors parking and customer parking. It states that visitors can be accommodated in the street, as can the customers. It also states that street parking requirements of the visitors and customers will not occur at the same time, which is difficult to understand with extended trading of retail outlets and the random nature of people visiting. I would now like to speak as a person who has lived in this street for 22 years. This street is very busy, and the street parking available is minimal, particularly on Thursday, Friday nights and weekends, and this is without the impact of 2 other major developments in progress, those at 376 to 380 Bell Street and 74 St George's Road. Arthur Street is a small street. It has 30 house blocks and approximately 55 streetcar spots. The street is unique in that it is surrounded by 2 major roads, Bell and St George's. On these roads there is no parking, and large developments are being created so visitors and residents with additional car parks park in the closest street, which is Arthur Street. The street is already used for parking by the RSL, the Masons Lodge, commuters using Bell Station, Polytechnic Institute, and even the football crowd come on finals. This street is also used for additional residents and visitors parking for the current 3 large developments that are already completed that use Arthur Street. 2 Arthur Street has 24 apartments, 70 to 72 St George's Road has 20 apartments, and 370 to 370 has already 8 apartments. There is approval ready for 40 additional apartments at 376 to 380 Bell Street, which has a retail precinct. 74 St George is under construction at the moment, and that's got 12 to 16 units. For both, Arthur Street is close by, and it will be used for parking, as there is a direct route to Arthur Street through the RSL car park. Apart from that, there are 4 subdivisions in the street with multiple dwellings which use the street parking. They're located at number 4, number 14, number 18, and there was even the creation of 2 additional numbers, 27 and 29, in recent times. Car parking standards are made for a reason, and I would ask they be adhered to. The waivering of visitors' parks and parking for patrons is not possible in this case, as there's just no parking available due to the other developments and businesses already exhausting the use of parking in the street.
Thank you.
19 seconds. I could have taken a breath. I actually I've got photos of all the developments. I've got photos of the streets at night.
Okay.
There's just no parking left. There just isn't, so that's why. Sorry.
Thank you. Thank you for your submission. You can take your seat back into the gallery, and I'll call on questions from councillors. Are there any questions? Would someone like to move the motion? Councillor Rennie.
Yes, I have an alternate motion, and that motion is that council refuse the application with grounds as follows. 1. The provision of battle axe bedrooms to dwellings will result in poor solar access, reducing both internal amenity and energy efficiency, contrary to the sustainability and on-site amenity objectives at clause 2206 of the Darebin planning scheme. 2. The size and layout of Units 9 on levels 1, 2 and 3 will result in poor internal amenity for future occupants, contrary to the on-site amenity objectives at Clause 2206 of the Darebin Planning Scheme. And 3, provision of car parking is inadequate and fails to comply with requirements of Clause 5206 of the scheme.
Thank you, Councillor Rennie. Is there a seconder for that motion? That's seconded by Councillor Newton. Councillor Rennie.
Thank you. I think we know that with sites such as this on Bell Street, we are likely to see development and that the development is likely to be 6 stories. But this is housing that's being built now for Darebin's future residents who will be living there in 10, in 30, in 50, maybe even 70 years' time. And we want to ensure that the building that's built will stand the test of time and will offer quality accommodation to our future residents. I don't see that when I look at these plans. I see little diversity in dwelling in terms of the sort of scale of the dwellings. I don't think there's a lot of internal amenity in the building, and I think this will be reflected in the resident mix. And I think we know that healthy communities are diverse communities where people from all different walks of life and backgrounds find themselves together, and I'm not convinced that's what we're going to get here. Absolutely. This building really reminds me of some of the sort of buildings that we saw go up in the Preston Junction area a decade ago. I think we widely recognise that they're just not good enough now, and I think we can and should expect better.
Thank you, Councillor Rennie. Councillor Newton.
Thank you, Miller Surf. So we see a lot of plans like that. I'm not against 6 stories on Bell Street. I'm not against development, but I think looking at this one, I thought about it like a consumer who might want to live in this dwelling. And what I saw was battle axe bedrooms. What I saw was bedrooms where natural light won't get through. And I agree with Councillor Rennie that I just don't think that these are very livable. And I think that we should be doing better. And that's why I'll support the alternative motion.
Thank you. Are there any further speakers? Councillor Messina.
I have a question in relation to the owner. Is there a spelling mistake that highlights who the owner is in this consideration of reports? I believe there might be a spelling mistake. Teresa Congiu, should that be Congiu?
I'll just have it. Chair. Madam Chair, I can confirm that that is the correct spelling.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Messina. We can make sure that the minutes reflect the correct spelling. Would you like to speak to the motion?
Yes, I do. I recognise that the wall of West Street, highly visible by the travelling west to east on Bell Street. My concern is the blank canvas wall, which is a canvas for graffiti and tagging. I'd like to see a graffiti management plan on how they will be addressing the graffiti management on an ongoing basis. Graffiti adds an unconscious layer of lack of unsafety and uncertainty in the community.
Thank you, Councillor Messina. Any further speakers? If not, I'll put that to the vote. All those in favour? That motion is carried. So the Planning Committee has decided to refuse the planning permit. The applicant has 60 days to appeal this decision to VCAT. A notice detailing tonight's decision and how an appeal can be lodged will be sent to all objectors and the applicant over the next week. Moving on now to the next agenda item, which is 5.2, application for a planning permit at 19 Dundas Street, Preston.
Thank you, Madam Chair. The proposal is to construct a 30-metre high telecommunications monopole and associated infrastructure cabinets in the location of an existing light pole within a supermarket car park. The facility is required to replace an existing facility which is to be removed. The existing facility is located at 6 to 34 High Street, approximately 200 metres northwest of the site. The site is zoned Commercial 1 zone and is affected by the Development Contribution Plan overlay, the Design and Development overlay and the Heritage overlay. There is no restrictive covenant registered on the title for the subject land. The application was advertised and 21 objections, including a petition with 108 signatures, were received as summarised on page 29, and responded to in detail on pages 29 to 30 of the agenda. In terms of visual impact, the facility is considered appropriate within an activity centre context where the character includes items of infrastructure such as light poles, power lines, traffic lights and tram cables. The location is somewhat screened by multi-storey mixed-use towers and trees and is located a minimum of 39 metres from the nearest residential properties. At its peak, the proposed electromagnetic radiation or EMR levels will accumulate to 0.55% of that allowed under the standard. The proposal demonstrates a high level of compliance with clause 52.19 of the Darebin planning scheme, and so approval is recommended subject to conditions outlined on pages 26 to 27 of the agenda. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. I have Charlotte Phillips registered to speak on behalf of the applicant.
Hi, my name is Charlotte Phillips. I'll be speaking on behalf of Telstra for Oricon as the applicant. So just a quick overview of the proposal at the moment. So construction of the works of the 30-metre monopole, but just wanted to reiterate that this site is a relocation of the previous site, which is located at 31 Plenty Road, Preston. And the previous site is being redeveloped, so in which case the pole is to be decommissioned and taken down as requested from the removal by the landowner. So as mentioned before, the subject site is actually in a commercial zone 1, subject to the design development overlay, schedule 3, the development contribution plan overlay and the environmental audit overlay and the heritage overlay. And it's considered that such positioning within the car park of the commercial zone 1 is favourable for a telecommunications facility, especially given the mixed use environment of the development and surrounds, which apart from the supermarket, is also in the commercial area of that junction as well. The proposed siting of the facility is in an area as well with high visual clutter. It is a monopole, it is a light pole swap out, so the lights will be replaced back onto the monopole just on around the technology. And it's also between, in the middle of the car park as well, which is provides a bit more of the amenity screening as well, set back from the street and any other visual impact from the streetscape or from surrounding houses that are outside the car park facility. The proposal impact on the aesthetics, it will be partially visible, however the antennas are required to be clear of obstructions to provide the required coverage. The fact that some of the facility will be partially visible by some vantage points or passer-bys does not disqualify this proposal. For this reason, the Code of Practice for Telecommunications Facility in Victoria provides guidance on the placement of the new telecommunications base stations, as cited as well in the overview and the code. And these types of antennas are commonly seen within the local neighbourhood and are not considered to be significantly visually detrimental to the surrounding environment. The proposal meets the principles as well as outlined in the recommendation of the code, and it is the development, and it also was outlined in the development application submitted back in December 2017. Some of the overarching objections that were received were the EME emissions, and the facility that's actually calculated on the maximum amount of power that is given out when operating. Just a bit of background, mobile networks are specifically designed to use the lowest possible power for base stations and mobile phones, which are necessary to ensure the quality voice or data services. So the maximum environmental EME level predicted at this proposal is really quite low at 0.55% of the allowable limit under the standard. So it's a really low number, and if they need any more information, you can get that from the ARPANSA website, and there's a lot of other guides on the internet which can give people more information. There was actually brought up to our attention a few days ago that council recommended maybe as part of a condition bringing in a certain artistic aspect to the proposal, and with further consultation with Anne Taylor, the council planner, we thought maybe the best thing to do was provide a really colour conscious approach, for visual amenity of the area, as it will be in a garden bed in the car park in the middle of a commercial zone. We thought it might be inappropriate to have something obtrusively artistic, on these small sheds in a garden bed. So we maybe suggested doing something like a eucalypt green, or so it sits well in its environment and it's not obtrusive. But we thought maybe the visual, artistic representation might be a little bit inappropriate in such a car parking sense. And that's all from me. Thank you.
Thank you. I'll now ask Maria Serpice to address us as an objector to this application.
Good evening, thanks for having me. My name's Maria Serpice, and my partner and I own one of the apartments in the Ottoworth building, which is, I would consider that this telecommunications monopole is our backyard. We are very concerned about the health impacts, even with the low level frequency that is stated. The internet is swamped with literature, empirical evidence all around the world that states that even low level frequency living underneath these monopoles is severely detrimental to our health, particularly because we will be there all the time. It's not just using a phone here and there. There's cellphonetaskforce.org, which is a not-for-profit organisation online which focuses on education, research and support for those affected and disabled by exposure to electromagnetic radiation. I can't articulate better than the research. So a couple of the articles that I printed out, they're from medical journals and from government journals, and also it's scientific. So I went through a lot and selected the ones that had highest credential. So I guess basically a human body is 70% liquid, so when it's exposed to electromagnetic radiation, it absorbs the radiation. Radio frequency accumulates over time, and the risks are more pronounced over 8 to 10 years of exposure. A concern is that when the stress goes on too long on your body, there is a reduced response in your body, and the cells are less likely to protect the body against the damage. This is why prolonged or chronic exposures may be quite harmful even at low intensities. There's a quote from Biological Effects of Cell Tower Radiation on the Human Body, Electrical Engineering Department in India. There's a lot of research for Australia, New Zealand, America. Radiation from cell phone towers has been associated with greater increase in brain tumour. This is due to the damage in the blood-brain barrier and the cells in the brain, which are concerned with learning, memory and movement. Children are more vulnerable. We have a newborn that will be living next door to us. Pregnant mothers are more vulnerable. Exposure to these fields has shown to be in connection with Alzheimer's disease, motor neuron disease, Parkinson's disease, and all these diseases are involved with the death of specific neurons. That's why they're classified as neurodegenerative diseases. Inhabitants living near mobile phone base stations are at risk for developing neuropsychiatric problems, headaches, memory loss, nausea, dizziness, tremors, muscle spasms, numbness, tingling, altered reflexes, muscle and joint pain, decreased libido, leg and foot pain, depression and sleep disturbances, seizures, paralysis, psychosis and stroke. There's extensive research about high rates of leukemia in areas of people that have lived near these cell phone towers. I'm sure everybody understands the health effects. I guess the hard thing is if this is erected and then there's a study that shows there's a high incident of cancers around these cell phone towers, how is Telstra going to, how are we going to prove that that's what it's from? There's a lot of apartments right next to the monopole. It leaves us, I've said that, and it is an eyesore, we believe, even with a gum tree eucalypt painting. I find that a very interesting, kind of hilarious juxtaposition. And I don't believe many people in this room would like a monopole to be in their own backyard. And we see this as a serious health risk and would like you to consider disapproving the permit.
Thank you for your submission. You can return to your seat. Thank you. Councillors, do you have any questions? Councillor Mir.
For you, Madam Mayor, what's the distance from the proposed pole to the closest apartment?
Officers?
Thank you, Madam Chair. The distance to residential properties is 39 metres to the south, 45 metres to the residential properties to the east, and approximately 60 metres to the residential apartments to the west.
Thank you. Are there any further questions? Anyone like to move a motion?
I'm happy to move the officer's recommendation.
So that's moved by Councillor Newton. Is there a seconder? Seconded by Councillor Rennie. Councillor Newton.
While I do acknowledge the concerns of the objector, I think that the report that we've read indicates that this isn't going to have any particularly harmful effects, and I know that this is moving it from a different location to where it is now, so I think that we have to go by the report.
Thank you. Councillor Rennie.
Similarly to Councillor Newton, as much as we would probably like not to see our landscape littered with these facilities at all, the reality is that the law is pretty clear that they are a permissible land use. I'm particularly ambivalent because a number of years ago I was confronted in my residence with exactly the same issue, and I was equally unhappy about the outcome of a similar facility being located, probably slightly closer to my own home. I think we need to look at the available science, and the available science suggests that they are safe at this distance and at this frequency. And also the fact that this is a relocation of existing pole that's actually not very far away. So people in this community have already one facility which is a similar distance from their homes, closer to some apartments, further from others, and what we're talking about is the relocation of that facility to the car park in the Audi. And until such time as the entire community and the legal system is not willing to see these facilities, we would be, I think, giving our community false hope if we were to reject this planning permit tonight, knowing full well that VCAT will issue the planning permit, should it go there.
Thank you. Are there any further speakers? No, I'll put that to the vote. All those in favour? That motion is carried. So the Planning Committee has decided to grant the planning permit. This decision can be appealed to VCAT. Objectors have 21 days in which to lodge an appeal, and the applicant has 60 days. A notice detailing the decision tonight and how an appeal can be lodged will be sent to all objectors and the applicant in the next week. The next item is 5.3, development plan at 1056 to 1140 and 1142 Plenty Road, Bundoora. Polaris, the former Larundel Psychiatric Hospital. Officers.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. This report seeks Council's approval to amend an existing development plan. It's already approved. Those changes affect the village precinct of the Polaris Town Centre. And as outlined in the report, the development is intended to serve, the development plan is intended to serve as a guide for future consideration of planning applications. So it's a broad overarching guiding document. There is included in the report on pages 36 and 37 a summary of the history of the development of the site and certainly the recent history. What's also inside the report is that most of these changes affect Lot 8 and the development that's proposed on Lot 8. There's a diagram on page 38 of the officer's report which identifies Lot 8. It also has the largest of the heritage buildings and it's proposed to be the last that will be restored. Madam Mayor, the councillors are probably aware there's been some issues with vandalism on the site that this site affects and provides a logical and certain commercial outcome for this particular site that would see this building restored and see the damage that has been caused recently arrested. It's important to note this building is in a heritage overlay. It's also protected through a Section 173 agreement. So the building does have quite some local heritage value, but it has been problematic to find a design solution that would work in the commercial world. And that's one of the things the report attempts to explain, that as part of it, and it does have the Heritage Advisor's support, is that part of the rear or the less contributory elements of the building to be demolished to enable its reuse as residential apartments with ground floor car parking provided. What's also changing is the current approval provides for a full-storey apartment. These are proposed to be replaced with three-storey townhouses. So the yield proposed through the development plan slightly reduces from the previous version. And this is probably relevant when you consider that when notice was provided of the development plan, there has been one objection received, and that objection essentially relates to parking and traffic matters. It's also detailed in the officer's report on page 39. So given the past issues and with this site and the increased clarity provided for the potential reuse and restoration of the heritage building, and the fact that the replacement of the apartments with townhouses really doesn't have a larger impact on the surrounding area, the application's been assessed as having net community benefit and should be supportable. So that's the recommendation before you. Thank you.
Thank you. I'll now call on James Goulding to speak on behalf of the applicant.
Good evening, Mayor, councillors. Thank you very much for your time this evening. My name's James Goulding. I'm from SJB Planning, and I work on behalf of Dill Corp, the landowner and developer of Arundel Polaris Housing Estate. Essentially, I'm here this evening to ask you to support the recommendation that's been put forward to you by the Planning Department. I had planned to go through the process that we've gone through to date, but one, it's very well summarised in the recommendation prepared, and I think Darren's just stolen most of the material as well. But I think that's just a reflection of the discussion, an open discussion we've had over the years and more recently about Polaris as a whole, and in particular the challenges that we've had with regards to Lot 8 with finding a suitable development solution that one is commercially viable, but also moves us one step closer to removing or ending the antisocial behaviour that is quite a focus of this site, and we understand to be a source or a sensitive issue for the local community. So, in brief, that's how it gets us to where we are, and we're moving to a different development typology from student housing to townhouses, and part of that being the townhouses that have been rolled out to date at Polaris have been quite successful. So with that, see that there's an opportunity to realise development here sooner rather than later. On that note, should the development plan be recommended for approval tonight, subject to the recommendations, a planning permit application will follow quite shortly, which obviously takes us one step closer to getting to development and removal of the restoration of the buildings, but two, also removal of the antisocial issue that plagues the building itself. With regards to the recommendation before you in considering it, there are a couple of items I would like to put forward as alternatives, and one specifically relates to recommendation number 4, which is the separation between the central stand of townhouses. It's requiring a 7-metre separation. The plan we've prepared shows a 6-metre separation. 7 metres is problematic I've participated in one of my favourite pastimes today of beating up architects, and the result of that is the most I can get out of them is 6.5 in terms of that separation. So as much as I enjoyed that experience, 6.5 is as far as I could get, and on that basis I would like to request a variation from 7 to 6.5. The other is more of a clarification around the Section 173 agreement that's proposed. We have no material objection to one being added or registered on title as part of this proposal, but we would seek clarification for the timing of the preparation of that agreement. And put quite simply, we would like to see it stipulated that in the endorsed development plan that it is required as a condition of permit on any permit issued for buildings and works, including demolition. That's sort of a normal practice in terms of how these things are structured. And lastly, as we've learnt from our experience with the restoration of the building and subsequent delivery of apartments on Lot 7, a standard paragraph added that allows the requirements of the development agreement to be varied at the consent of council in writing, should it be to their satisfaction. And that's in the event unforeseen opportunities or issues arise, and there is an opportunity to vary those should we be able to demonstrate merit. So on that basis, I said I'd be quick. I failed, but essentially back to the beginning, I'd like to request your support subject to those additional items I've requested so we can move on to getting this site developed. Thank you.
Thank you. There's no objectors registered to speak, so councillors, do you have any questions? Councillor Messina.
Just would like to ask, how long has the site been vacant for?
I heard a voice behind me, same one in mine. It has been, the site was transferred to the then Vic Urban in the 90s, so it's been vacant for beyond 20 years.
And my next question is item number 4, the dimensions provided for the central pedestrian walkway achieving a minimum dimension of 7 metres. I understand that the developer is now seeking an amendment to 6.5 metres. How does that comply with the planning committee and your recommendation, please?
Madam Mayor, I think there's variation with development plans to say they're generally in accordance, and I can explain that was simply scaled off. There's not a dimension specified on the plans. So when we come to a planning permit stage, we will actually be asking for greater precision and that they be expressed as a dimension. So we will certainly, after the meeting, I have an email from Mr Golding. I'll reply and acknowledge that there's that level of flexibility through this process.
Okay, thank you. Are there any other questions?
Sorry, can I just,
Councillor,
just for clarification, in regards to the flexibility that Mr Rudd spoke about, does that cover each of the points made by the applicant, just to confirm that?
It does, Madam Mayor.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions? Would someone like to move a motion?
I'm happy to move the officer's recommendation.
Let's move by Councillor Newton and a seconded by Councillor Rennie. Councillor Newton.
Thank you, Melissa. So as the person in the audience said, I think this has been vacant for too long. And as a ward councillor of Latrobe Ward, which represents Bundoora and Reservoir, I'm really pleased to see that something is going to be happening to Lot 8 and the Larundel site. I work at Latrobe Uni, and there's a research centre that's recently moved just up there. They've done a really nice renovation of the inside while keeping the heritage outside, and I think this does achieve that. And yeah, completely agree. You know, it's been an eyesore for a long time. I think the community is really, really ready to see some nice townhouses here. And I think it will really complete the Polaris area. So very pleased to support this one.
Thank you. Councillor Rennie.
Thank you. It's not very often that we get proposals come before us that we could probably really genuinely say, yes, I see the community benefit inherent in this development plan. And I think that that is the case here, that what exists there at the moment is not satisfactory to neighbours, to the broader community, to the owners of the site or to council. And what is proposed will actually add value to the entire precinct. And I look forward to getting the planning permit, and I hope that the design will be exemplary and will enable us to show that flexibility, which we like to do when we're faced with exemplary design, because I think that this is a highly desirable place to live. It's obviously very close to the university. There's the tram that goes down Plenty Road, and building really good quality housing in this neighbourhood will mean that more people can actually enjoy the amenity and the standard of living that comes from that.
Thank you. Are there any further speakers? No, I'll put that to the vote. All those in favour? The motion is carried. So the Planning Committee has decided to approve the amended Village Precinct Development Plan. I'll just clarify with the officers in terms of appeal rights. Are there any appeal rights to VCAT, and what are they?
Not with regard to a
Development plan?
There are only appeal rights for the proponents.
Okay, so the applicant can appeal the decision. It doesn't look like they will.
There's a catch-all clause.
Glad we clarified. Okay, moving now to 5.4, planning permit application for 196 to 198 Albert Street Reservoir. Officers.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. This application seeks approval for a 4-storey residential development at a height of 13 metres. The development proposes 20 dwellings and 21 car parks within a basement configuration. The 20 dwellings comprise of a mix of a single 3-bedroom dwelling, 13 2-bedroom dwellings and 6 single-bedroom dwellings. There is a waiver of 4 car parking spaces sought within the application. The subject land is included within the residential growth zone, and this is in one of those precincts where there is a mandatory 4-storey limit. So the proposal is at the limit, but supporting that is the fact that it's on a double lot. The land has an area of 1,222 square metres on a corner of Albert and Newton Streets, so it's a combination of the two. So it's one of the first few we've seen in this precinct where the lots are combined, and the planning controls encourage that. And there's an easier passage through the design and development overlay that applies to this site and others nearby. The application has been advertised. There was a single objection received. There's a good summation of that. That was really concerning the existing tree. And there's some commentary explaining how that played out on page 57 of the officer's report. As set out in the officer's report, the application has been considered against the various sections, including the Design and Development Overlay 19. Clause 55 is the main one that applies. It provides a detailed res code standards. The application, as you'll see from the table included within the report, is the application has been assessed as having a high level of compliance. It is therefore recommended for support.
Thank you. There is no speakers registered for this item from the applicant or objectors. So, councillors, do you have any questions? Would someone like to move a motion? Councillor Mee?
I'm happy to move the officer's recommendation.
And a seconder? Seconded by Councillor Williams. Councillor Mee.
For this development, it's in the residential growth zone. It's got a mix of different styles. They're quite well designed with good access to light, which is different to what we saw earlier in the evening. It is on a double lot and on a major road, so it's a good location for this kind of development. And we do talk about needing more affordable housing in Darebin. I think in this location, it's in the north of our municipality, but not too far away from some of those amenities, so it's good to see plans like this.
Thank you. Councillor Williams.
A development like this is quite attractive, considering we have a major park area nearby. At the end of the street, we've got the community centre, and then we have a major activity centre, Northland Shopping Centre. So, and on a main road, I think it's there's a lot of rundown homes along there, especially the Housing Commission that are way overdue have been upgraded. So it'd actually be nice to see something revamping and a bit of I guess something nice to look at for once. So yes, and the design is quite pleasing to see. and the light wells, and I think is important for what, it's not your typical home that's usually borrowing light from other rooms, and it's nice and pleasing to see that there are 3-bedroom apartments also.
Thank you, Councillor Williams. Are there any further speakers? Councillor Newton.
Thank you, Melissa Surf. So I really second what Councillor Williams said. I think that I know this area quite well, and I think that this development will really lift it. And I think in contrast to the application that we saw for Bell Street, I think this one really meets a lot of the requirements that we have for light, for decent sized bedrooms, etc. And I think it's going to be a wonderful addition to the area, actually. So please support this one.
Thank you. Councillor Messina.
I just wanted to add what the Councillor Amir, Councillor Newton, Councillor Williams have stated. And when I look at these plans, I see good-sized bedrooms, and I see a master bedroom with an ensuite, a living area and a meal area, and lots of light. So that's just a tick, tick, tick for me. So I'm happy to recommend the approval.
Thank you. Any further speakers? No? I'll put that to the vote. All those in favour? The motion is carried. So the Planning Committee has decided to grant the planning permit. This decision can be appealed to VCAT. Objectors have 21 days in which to lodge an appeal with VCAT, and the applicant has 60 days. A notice detailing the decision tonight and how an appeal can be lodged will be sent to all objectors and the applicant in the next week. So that's all of our applications. So moving now to item 6, which is other business. 6.1 is general planning information scheduled VCAT applications. Is there a mover for that motion? Moved by Councillor Williams, seconded by Councillor Messina. All those in favour? Motion is carried. Item 7 is urgent business. There is no urgent business. And that brings us to the close of our meeting. So thank you for those who came along this evening. And we'll close the meeting there. Thank you.